Lithuanians emerged from a group of people called the Aisti, whose ancestors came from India. After migrating to Eastern Europe, the Aisti then split up into many tribes. Each tribe had its own language and culture. Aisti lands were covered in forests and swamps, so it was hard for the people to move from place to place. Therefore, the Aistis usually settled down and lived off land. Because the land was fertile and the climate was perfect, Aistis could grow fruits and grains. They also cultivated flax and imported wool to make clothing. However, the farming methods, much like the rest of Europe, were primitive, and the seasons unpredictable, so the Aisti people couldn't depend on agriculture as a major source of income. Therefore, they took up other ways of life, such as animal husbandry, hunting, fishing, and beekeeping. The first people they came into contact with were the Vikings. They set up trade routes in the Baltic and eventually started to conquer the Aisti lands. However, Aisti people presumably fought back, and by the 10th century destroyed all of the Vikings' trading posts. Before the 14th century, Aisti people were pagans, and, like the ancient Greeks, believed in many gods. They held certain natural objects, such as the fire, the forest, and the grass snakes, sacred. Attempts to Christianize the Aisti people began as early as the 10th century. Missionaries from faraway lands tried to bring Christianity into the land. However, all attempts eventually failed, as most missionaries paid with their lives after offending the people with their Christian traditions. Aisti people continued to practice paganism until the 14th century. Two dominant Ice-T enemies existed during the High and Late Middle Ages: the Livonian Order and the Teutonic Order. The Livonian Order was founded in 1202, when the German merchants became interested in Christianizing pagan Ice-T tribes living in present-day Latvia. At first, Christianization failed, as Latgalian and Livonian tribes often ravaged Christian villages. Finally, a Livonian bishop named Albert started bringing over knights from Germany to help in his missions. With those knights he defeated three pagan tribes. However, he stopped short of conquering the Samogitian tribe that fought back and won the Battle of Cholet in 1236. This battle scared the Livonian Order into an alliance with the Teutonic Knights. Prussians confronted the Christian world much earlier than other Istes. German and Polish missionaries that came into their land also had difficulties Christianizing the Prussians. Once the missionaries established a Christian community on the Prussian land, the Prussians devastated it. Following the Livonian Order's example, missionaries asked Germany for military aid. The sent German knights and missionaries found the Prussian lands empty, for they now hid from their invaders in the forest. Without a Prussian in sight, missionaries happily proceeded to set up Christian communities. As soon as they would turn their backs on their newly created towns, Prussians would jump out of the forest and burn them to the ground. Many such incidents occurred until finally a frustrated missionary named Christian of Oliva and Conrad of Masovia invited the Teutonic Order to Prussia. In 1231, the order started to attack the western Icy lands. They called all their conquered lands Prussia. Meanwhile, the Lithuanian tribe was amidst constant warfare with the Russian dukes. Although they managed to defeat the dukes in the 13th century, the warfare was not completely eliminated. The newly formed Livonian Order and powerful Volhynia dukes threatened their peace. To reduce the threat of foreign invasion, Lithuania signed a peace treaty with Volhynia Duke in 1219. After that, the Lithuanian tribe joined efforts with the conquered Livonian and Estonian people and launched an attack on the Livonian Order. Although this attack didn't damage the order so much as it robbed it of some of its resources, the order grew significantly weaker over the next decade till it was finally crushed in 1236 at the Battle of Cholet and absorbed by the Teutonic Order. To prevent from becoming an easy target for foreign attacks, the decentralized Lithuanian tribe needed a strong ruler. Finally, one step forward. A duke by the name of Mindaugas unified the country after he had deposed of all Lithuanian dukes, including his brother. Because the Livonian Order was a hard nut to crack, Lithuania turned its attention to the eastern lands. Mindaugas sent various dukes on war missions to the eastern lands while taking the dukes' districts under his direct control. He forbade the dukes to come back home from their missions and demanded them to rule their newly acquired possessions in the Russian lands. Such was the case with his two nephews and the Samogitian duke. When they tried to protest against Mindaugas' actions, Mindaugas confiscated their titles. All three of them bitterly fled to Volhynia, where the nephew's relative, Grand Duke Daniel, received them and loaned them a hand against the bully Mindaugas. The three of them formed a powerful alliance with several tribes in the Livonian Order against Mindaugas. Mindaugas countered by turning to an old enemy, the Livonian Order, for help. The Order agreed to help on one condition, that Mindaugas would be baptized. He agreed, and the Order successfully dissolved the alliance against Mindaugas. After baptism, Mindaugas wrote a letter to Pope Innocent IV asking to be crowned as the King of Lithuania. The Pope agreed, and Lithuania became a kingdom for the first time in 1253. As a king, Mindaugas was faced with a problem. Lithuania now included Samogitia and Aukštaitija. but the former refused to cooperate with Mindaugas. Angry at the Samogitians, Mindaugas tried to assign Samogitia off to the Livonian order several times, but every single time the tribe refused to recognize the order's rule. Even alone, Samogitians aggressively defended their territory, driving off the Livonian order. Finally, the Livonian order grew tired of having to deal with the stubborn Samogitians and withdrew its attacks. Still, in 1260, the Livonian order attempted to conquer Samogitia, but Samogitians, led by Duke Cernota, once again stood their ground in the Battle of Durbe. The order was devastated once again, and was functioning again only after Western Europe helped restore it. Mindaugas's popular opinion plummeted late in his reign. Not only was he criticized for creating an alliance with a foreign state against Lithuanian dukes, but he also refused to help his relatives in battles. He was branded a traitor and murdered by his nephew Cernota in 1263.